Good evening, everybody. I think we'll start going now. I know it takes a couple of minutes for people to get online, but I think it's best to kick off. Thank you all for joining. I'm not sure where everyone is in the world, but I think we've got 3 different continents online tonight. So the wonders of these webinars. So thank you all for joining, and we've got a great webinar ahead that we're really excited about. For those of you that don't know me, my name's Johnny Conran and I'm managing partner at Joseph Mews. And as I said, it's exciting to do tonight. The concept of what we want to offer you and our clients, whether existing or prospective clients, is a bit of an insight into Birmingham versus Manchester. I think that depending on which side of the fence you sit, some people prefer Birmingham, some prefer Manchester, and the reality is that both of them are fantastic investment cases, and they both have their reasons to be #1 in various reports, which they both have been over the last few years. So tonight we're going to go over it. We're going to compare them head to head in different aspects, and it's not just going to be from myself and my colleague Andrew. We're also going to hear from 2 experts in the letting department, which is so important because, as we know, the cornerstone of your investment in real estate is the tenant. You want to make sure that the property is consistently rented and that you're always going to have a demand there, so you don't have void periods. And so understanding the markets where they are now and how they're performing is really important. So who better to hear from than for Birmingham? We have Raj Bedi, who heads up Martin & Co in Birmingham, who are fantastic, the best agent there. And then we have Dan Sawyer, who is the managing director of Cherry Pick Properties, who's going to talk to us about the Manchester market. So these guys know these markets inside out, and they're the best people to listen to discuss what's happening now and what's projected for the future. So if we go to the next slide, please, I'm going to start off with a bit of a history about Joseph Mews. I'm sure that some of you will know who we are, some of you might not. So to give you a brief overview of how we started, Andy Foote is our chairman, and he started the business a long time ago, and this distribution element and an option based on his own experience as a property investor. He invested in a development that was off plan, and he had a terrible experience. Nobody kept him in the loop about what was happening, and then he got a phone call one day and said, now it's time to complete. So he wanted to create a business whereby no matter where you are in the world, whether you're in the UK, where our developments are, or whether you're 9,000 miles away in Hong Kong, that you have somebody to hold your hand through the experience and you can understand it a lot better and have your hand held, as I said. So that's the concept of how we started as a business. And in our time, it's been a great success. We've delivered over 3,500 properties throughout the UK, and focusing on these areas that we believe in from an investment perspective. Next slide, please. So people often ask us why we're called Joseph Mews. It's not a very property type name. And the reason is actually, again, to do with Andy, our chairman. He has started various businesses in his time, but what he'll always tell you is his greatest achievement is the charity that you see on your screen now, the brain tumor charity, which is actually the largest brain tumor charity on the planet, which is quite remarkable. And Andy started that about 20 years ago when his son Joseph sadly lost his life to a brain tumor at age 9. And so in Joe's name, a lot of Andy's offices and houses around the world are named after Joseph. One of our offices in Birmingham is a Mews house called Joseph Mews, and we thought to keep the name alive and give some legacy to Joseph and both to Andy, we would name the business after him. So that's where the name comes from. It's obviously a charity that's incredibly close to all of us within the business, and if you would like to donate or learn more about the charity and what's been achieved, then it's well documented on our website. Next slide, please. As I mentioned before, we've delivered just under 3,500 units throughout the UK. Everything we build is in the UK. I think it's important to point that out. Obviously, we have offices overseas in Dubai, South Africa, the Far East, but everything that we build and everything that we're a part of is UK based. 34 developments are what we've sold, and just under £600 million worth of residential developments that we've completed. So it's a great track record, it's a big track record, and that's really important when you're putting your trust into a company, is that they've done this before. Next slide, please. So on that, and talking about trust and track record, it's really important to us at Joseph Mews that we partner with the right people, whether it be from the legal side with solicitors that we refer our clients to, whether it's from mortgage brokers, whether it's from agents, as we're hearing from Raj and Dan today, but also evidently the most important part really is the actual quality of the development that you're buying into. You know, this is a tangible asset. This is something that needs to stand the test of time. It needs to perform consistently up until a point where you're going to have an exit strategy that is achievable because the quality still exists. And the way to do that is to deal with the best developers in the market, and that's what we do. So Joseph Mews partner exclusively with some of the best developers in the country that we know we can trust, that we know are going to deliver, and that are going to deliver not only for us, but for our investors. Some of these names might not mean a lot to you on the screen, but I think Knight Frank, most of us will know who they are, one of the largest PLCs in real estate in the world, and the most respected from a consultancy basis in the UK. Joseph Mews are partners with Knight Frank in the Midlands. What does that mean? It means that every time they sell a plot of land to a developer in the UK, in the Midlands, sorry, Joseph Mews are the exclusive distributor. So that's a big testament to us as a business, but also you know that the developments that you're looking at that are affiliated with Knight Frank are going to have the correct due diligence, be priced correctly, the best locations, and obviously the best developers. So one of the properties we're going to talk about at the end is actually a Knight Frank development. Next slide, please. So in terms of the process, we mentioned this earlier, which was the concept behind starting the business that Andy wanted to make as streamlined as possible, is if your clients are, you know, if you are based in the UK, or if you're based 3,000, 6,000, 9,000 miles away from the property itself, as an investment, this can be a bit of a headache if you don't have the right partners and your hand held through the process. So this is something we've created both in the UK and overseas. We have a panel of lawyers, we have a panel of letting agents, we have solicitors, we have mortgage brokers. And so we're constantly keeping you in the loop with who you need to be in touch with at any given time. This transcends beyond the completion of your property. We always stay in touch with our clients to let them know how the asset is performing, and obviously letting them know how they can expand that portfolio further. So it is really important that wherever you are in the world, you know that you're going to have Joseph Mews as a liaison between all the different entities that you need to speak to. We point you in the right direction and hold your hand through it. So this is a really important part, whether you're in the UK or overseas. Next slide, please. So just to give you one case study of an example, and this is a recent example that is actually handing over as we speak. It was a fantastic development in the centre of Birmingham, right on the canals. It's by a developer called Consortia, who are exclusive partners with Joseph Mews. They're fantastic, obsessed with the quality of what they build, which is so important to us. And testament to that, if we go to the next slide, is the fact that, and the reason I'm using this as a case study, is that in the UK Property Awards last year, or coming into this year, they won 3 first place awards, including the best architecture of a multiple residence in the whole of the UK. So as I said, you've got the Knight Frank, obviously, partnership I've mentioned, and also the developers we partner with are some of the best in the UK that we know we can rely on, and aren't just going to build your carbon copy properties. They're going to build something special, something that will consistently rent and will consistently offer you that return and also the exit strategy in the future. So enough from me. I'm going to pass you over now to my colleague, managing partner in the UK, Andrew Siegel. And the concept of today, as I'm sure you've seen, is that it's different rounds between Birmingham and Manchester. So there's 4 rounds and then a final round where we're going to go through some developments. But I'll pass over to Andrew now, who's going to kick off with round 1, which is discussing the 5-year property market performance and economic indicators. Thanks a lot.
Thanks for that, Johnny. So as Johnny says, on to round 1. We're going to look at property market performance and economic indicators. If I could have the next slide, please. So Birmingham versus Manchester, let's have a look at the 5-year performance. And if you look there, pretty similar really. Average property price in 2018, 188 Birmingham, 177 in Manchester. Be nice if we could go back to those times. Average property price today, or September 23, similar, 234 Birmingham, 243 Manchester. So growth there over that period, 24% Birmingham, 37% in Manchester. I'd argue probably higher in Manchester, probably simply because we were sort of starting from a lower price point. And as you can see there, average rental price has grown 30-odd% over the last 3 years. And as we'll hear from Raj and Dan later, some of those, you know, we had double-digit increases last month for sort of various reasons, and those were an average, so it takes into account the sort of whole area of Birmingham, whole area of Manchester. And as Johnny said, as an exclusive promoter, we go with developers. Obviously, we do all the due diligence, but the area's got to be right. So historically, we outperform the market in terms of rental yields and capital appreciation. And these figures are, as I say, they're averages. We can outperform the market with a bit of careful research. And they're normal, say normal, 6 months, 12 months AST. So normal is short hold tenancy, normal rents for maybe 6 or 12 months. In some developments it's allowed, and some areas we have corporate short lets. Again, we have a corporate short let partner, so yields can potentially be higher there as well. But it's a good starting point to have a look at those figures. If I could have the next slide, please. Thank you. So again, not much of a boxing match so far because we're sort of neck and neck. Similar in terms of average wage. Population growth higher in Birmingham, probably because it's in the centre of the city, and Birmingham as well is the #1 location today for people leaving London. So when people are moving out, they're moving to Birmingham for prices of property, lifestyle is good, and of course a lot of companies are relocating from London to Birmingham and indeed Manchester. And we've got the visitor economy, so you know, the Airbnb market is strong, for example, in Birmingham and Manchester. So you wouldn't necessarily think coming on holiday to Birmingham. But again, Birmingham and Manchester are key in terms of that visitor economy, that the 2 billion and the 2.4 billion. I'd argue Manchester is probably more impressive there, simply because it's a smaller, the core of the city centre is quite a bit smaller. Birmingham's the second biggest city by in the UK. Manchester, depending on which figures you look at, is sort of third or fourth. And again, Manchester, you have the #1 for Chinese tourists. The #1 location they visit when coming to the UK is Buckingham Palace. #2 is Manchester, I think Manchester United actually, for the football. And the third is Bicester Village in Oxfordshire, which is a massive retail sort of shopping complex, which was or is sort of tax-free. And of course, you've got Media City, which I'll come on to as well in Manchester, which sort of really helped put Manchester on the map in the last couple of years. And then this enterprise density, so that's the total number of registered businesses per 1,000 people of working age. So again, pretty similar across the two there. And then if you look at sort of business sector, manufacturing for Birmingham, not only have you got sort of Jaguar Land Rover and all the associated businesses that come off of that big manufacturing, they manufacture the cars and the engines in the area as well. You've got the jewellery quarter, so there's manufacturing there. There's the jewellery quarter in Birmingham, there's 500 shops associated and manufacturers associated with the jewellery. It's got its own assay office where they do all the hallmarking for the jewellery. And again, Manchester, known predominantly for its service side, particularly media with the likes of the BBCs and the ITV. So we'll cover a little bit more of the business sectors there as well as we move through the presentation. If I could have the next slide, please. Again, as we saw, average price 234, average rental yield in the UK is around 5%. We're seeing on average 6%, 6.5% on long-term lets in Birmingham. And again, nice predictive from your Knight Franks, your JLLs, a nice steady price growth prediction up until 2026, and the same for the rental yields as well. And if we have a look at the next slide, please, Manchester. Again, very similar there when you're looking at the average price point, rental yields. And again, what's nice about, in terms, we did a webinar a little while ago looking at the top 10 places to invest in the UK. And particularly with overseas clients, they like London because it's London. London didn't even feature in the top 10 because £240,000 isn't going to buy you a car parking space in a prime area in London. You're not getting the yields, haven't been getting capital appreciation. and it's just, there are other places to go. 70% of investors living in London are investing further north, your Manchesters, your Birmingham, for these reasons. It's all about the maths, isn't it? We all want capital appreciation. We all want the best rental yields. And again, we all know, any of us that have got buy-to-lets, we know, we're becoming more of a country of renters. That's for various reasons, not only lifestyle, but it's sort of, not only for financial reasons, which is the main driver, of course, but for lifestyle choices as well. A lot of the youngsters, they don't want a 25-year mortgage. And again, we're not building enough houses. If we built the number of houses we should be building, we should be building 320,000 homes a year. We're only building 200,000, and that's been for decades. If we built 320,000 houses, apartments a year now, which we'll never do because we've never even made 200 in decades and decades, 200,000 a year. Take 50 years to make up the shortfall. So it really is a perfect storm if you're a buy-to-let landlord. And again, have a look at the BBC, some great news articles. It was on the news the other day, and I'm sure Raj and Dan will back this up, but on average in the UK, there's 25 people going for every one rented property, whether it's a house or a home in the UK. So I'm going to call up the next slide, and then I'm going to hand you, I've got one poll to go. So with that round one there, we're looking at the based on past performance and economic indicators, which I've just detailed, which just give us a little tick in the box there. So far, if you were considering investing, would you go Birmingham or Manchester? We'll just let the totalizer add up, see what we've got there. One. Just give it a few more seconds, see what it comes out at. Okay, right, so 48% Birmingham, 52%. Manchester, I'm going to make a note of that as we go through. 48, 52. Yeah, as you might expect, pretty close. We'll come back to that later, but thanks very much for that. If I can have the next slide, please. Lovely, thank you. So round two. First of all, I'm going to hand you over to Raj Bedi, Principal Martin & Co in Birmingham. He's going to look at the market dynamics in Birmingham. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. My name's Raj. I'm the director of Martin & Co, and we've been operating as a letting agent in Birmingham city centre since 2012. So just going to discuss with you some of the trends that we've seen in the last few years. So if I could have the next slide, please. Okay, so over the 12 years while we've been operating in Birmingham, this is the busiest by far it's ever been. Now, consistently over the years, rents have risen, but they've risen on a small scale. But then since 2021, they've gone through the roof, and there's a number of reasons for that. A big one is the developers aren't building enough. There's not enough apartment buildings being built, so there's a shortage of supply. And as well as that, there's a massive increase in tenant demand. So we're getting a lot of people relocate. Andrew mentioned about people, offices moving from London. Their head offices are moving to Birmingham, and then obviously staff are relocating here from London, overseas, and other cities. Birmingham's also got the highest retention rate for the universities. So a lot of people that go to the universities in Birmingham, they stay here when they graduate and get a job here. Since COVID, we have seen a bit of a trend with a lot of lets that we agree. They're now via videos and virtual tours. So that's just something that's come about in the last few years that's quite common now, which is really helpful when we're getting people that are relocating from, you know, other cities and overseas, and don't necessarily always have the time to come out and physically view something. Obviously, it helps a lot when we send them a video tour of something, you know, brand new or nearly new, you know. So it's you know, there's a big demand for the new build apartments. Tenants' preferences have changed a bit over the last few years, especially since COVID. People want more from an apartment. They want more space, higher quality specification, better standard of living, and there's also an increase in demand for communal facilities. So previously, you know, 10 years ago, you know, you'd be lucky if the development had a concierge, whereas now you'll have things like rooftop terraces and co-working spaces and all this sort of stuff, which are really, really popular and in demand from tenants. Could I have the next slide, please? So yeah, these are a few of the facilities that tenants are now looking for, and as I mentioned, you know, previously that they weren't offered really in Birmingham, but it is more of a new, more recent thing. So you know, tenants are after the concierge, the gym, residence lounge, cinema room, and work from home area and communal gardens. So they're just looking for the top spec and top facilities. It's not to say that a development that doesn't have all these facilities won't be still in high demand. It just means that it will be at a lower price point, and it's the more luxury apartments that will have these sort of facilities. And the features that tenants tend to look for when they're picking an apartment, obviously size, the specifications, so you know, the quality of the kitchens and bathrooms, new. So a lot of tenants want, you know, something pretty much brand new or nearly new. If it's a 2-bed, they may want 2 bathrooms, and floor and furnishing. So it is preferred to be on a higher floor for a tenant, and also the furnishing. So Birmingham city centre is a very predominantly furnished market, so it's definitely a high demand for furnished opposed to unfurnished, and the quality of them furnishings do really help. So spending a couple of extra thousand on a furniture pack, from, you know, upgrading from a basic to a high quality furniture pack, will really help you get the maximum rental yield. Could I have the next slide, please? So just going on to some of the target markets for you know, the number of bedrooms for an apartment. So I often get asked the question by investors, you know, should they buy a 1-bed or 2-bed? And I often sit on the fence and say, well, there's no right or wrong, but the reason that I say there's no right or wrong is because genuinely, you know, you can't, like, they both have different target markets and they're both in high demand. So it's so hard to say, you know, do you go for a 1-bed or a 2-bed? And when you see here, so, you know, you've got for a studio, they would just attract more singles. You will get a few couples that would be interested in the studio, but it is mainly single professionals. And a 1-bed would attract singles and couples, and then 2 and 3 beds can attract singles, couples, and sharers. So all have their own target market. You know, you could argue, okay, a 2-bed because you've got the option of sharers, but then you could, vice versa, you could say a 1-bed's more affordable, so that might attract more interest from a tenant. But yeah, ultimately you can't go wrong with a 1-bed, 2-bed, 3-bed, or a studio, really. Everything will rent in Birmingham city centre. If you put something on the market, there'll be, you know, loads of applicants trying to book in, you know, multiple offers, so everything just goes quickly. In terms of location, obviously you've got different pockets of Birmingham city centre. Each tenant may have their own preference. Some tenants don't mind which pocket of Birmingham they're in, but often they look for things like, you know, is it near a park? Is it good transport links, you know, maybe close to New Street Station or Snow Hill Station or Jewellery Quarter Station? Is it walking distance from where they work? How close is it to, you know, the shops, bars and restaurants, you know, whether that be the city centre or the bars in the Brindley Place or Jewellery Quarter. And then also somewhere safe. Thankfully, Birmingham city centre is a very safe area. It's you know, an area where it's, you know, mostly professionals, young professionals. So yeah, it is a very safe area to live in. Could I have the next slide, please? Here's some furnishing examples. So it just when it comes to furnishing, you can just get a basic furniture package, but I strongly recommend kitting the apartment out that bit level higher, so it's got a bit of soft furnishings, bit of artwork on the walls, rugs, and just a few accessories really, because it, you know, spending a few £100 or, you know, an extra 1,000, 2,000 on the furniture pack could, you know, get you an extra £100 a month rent than what you'd get from a basic furniture pack. So I always encourage landlords to pay that little bit extra to get something really high quality, especially if you're spending a lot of money on an apartment. You don't want the furniture to let the apartment down. Next slide, please. Okay, I'll pass you over to Dan now from Cherry Pick Properties so he can discuss the Manchester lettings market with you.
Hi everyone. Yeah, my name's Dan from Cherry Pick Properties, and we run an agency in Manchester specialising in the city centre. We've been doing it for nearly 10 years, so yeah, I'd like to think that we're quite well placed, and we've seen a few changes, as some of the previous slides have shown, but some huge increases over the last few years. Now, it is due to increased population and low supply, as you know, Johnny and Andrew were talking about earlier. So you've got this perfect mix, this perfect storm, to copy the phrase that was used earlier, in terms of there's simply not enough properties for people to rent. So therefore, of course, the prices are going to carry on shooting up. This is particularly the case for luxury apartments or new builds, because of course people want the newest spec, and people's expectations have got higher as time's gone on, particularly for students, which we'll go on to on a later slide, who have incredibly high standards, especially the wealthy Arab nations. There's some very wealthy students that we work with, and we work with some of the governments in terms of sponsored students also. You've got this stat there that as of June 23, Manchester had the highest annual rental growth in England outside of London. Well, that doesn't surprise me, given that I think it was during this summer, we had one stat on several properties whereby we had a 30% increase from the previous tenancy, which was 12 to 18 months prior to that. So I know maybe 6 slides back, we had the statistic of a 37% growth, I think it was, over 5 years. However, it's crazy to think that there's a few examples that it was almost that high just within 18 months. Obviously, I can't promise you that will always be the case. It's not going to be long-standing, but yeah, we've had some really good growth of late. So the outlook does remain positive. Again, they just can't build enough to keep up with the demand, so that is expected to continue over the foreseeable. Next slide, please. So many of you will know that Manchester is a university city. There's 5 universities within Greater Manchester, although homing in more to the city centre, there's 3. There's 3 what we call super unis. Used to be 4, but 2 of them combined together, which feeds into the rental market. Of course, the students generally aren't coming here to buy, so it places huge extra pressure, particularly in the summer months, all the way up to probably about October. It's just started to settle off these past few weeks, but there's that added pressure over the summer months whereby our phones go crazy and we are often booking 10, 20, 30 viewings, block viewings, having to stage them out, blocking out a whole day for a property. And we're having to even treat it like a sale property, whereby we start getting people's best and final offers sometimes people offering in excess of the asking price, which you've probably seen in the news, and it's been quite well reported how high the demand is and how people have been struggling to rent. Now, often the students that we're dealing with are mature students, final year students, and international students, which brings me on to the next point, because I know a lot of people will actually ask, well, do students make good tenants? Well, I would say yes, 99% of the time. As with all tenants, of course, we have to carry out some strict vetting to make sure that we have got the best candidates in there. But generally, yeah, they make great tenants. If they don't have guarantors, so if they're not based in this country, we insist that they'll pay rent in advance. So it can be quite a nice windfall if we get an extra 12 months in advance. That it just really helps our landlords and their cash flow. Let's say if they have had to pay an additional amount for a luxury furniture pack, which I also recommend. So it really helps that as well. Next slide, please. You may have also heard Manchester being referred to as the Twin City powerhouse. So Manchester and Salford are cities within their own rights. If you look on a map, they're virtually entwined with one another. So you've got these two huge economically powerful cities that essentially feed into the same rental market and sales. So sales and rental growth has been exceptional over the last few years. BBC obviously moved to Media City quite some years ago. I know that at the beginning we weren't quite sure with as to how that would go, and is it just the BBC? There was lots of talk of other media companies moving there as well, and thankfully, years later, proof's in the pudding. Lots more companies have moved there. It's built a huge infrastructure around the Media City, so all the caterers, props, costumes, the casting agencies. It's just created a huge additional income to the economy. You've also got the Trafford Regeneration plan, which you may have read about. It's over 136 acres. It's going to be over the next 5 to 10 years. And again, it's just going to plough a huge amount of money, which is almost in the middle. It's towards the right side of both Salford and Manchester city centre. You've just got that Trafford area that sits cosily and basically hooks up to both cities. One of the large employers in Manchester, you've got Amazon. It's got only 2 head offices in the UK. One's in London, the second one's in Manchester, as well as Unilever, Microsoft, Booking.com and Kellogg's, which I know there'll be further companies on a future slide, so I won't go into that too much now. Next slide, please. So this is just a recap. Again, we've got this useful graph that shows the chart, I should say, that shows the rental growth between 23 and 27. You can see there Manchester just pipping Birmingham to the post on, I think, virtually everything. It does tie actually in a couple of years, doesn't it? So yeah, again, extremely strong demand, probably helped by the fact that you've got this twin city status, and you've also got it as being a super strong university city. Again, shortage of supply, which is going to be the main reason, an ongoing reason. There's just simply not enough land, not enough planning, although I think the government are looking to try and work with the local councils to make planning more easy. So hopefully that will help us cater to this demand. And again, the economic growth, so you've got both Birmingham and Manchester, huge economies. Birmingham, you've got many people moving from London just as a natural, it's almost commutable. People will actually work in London. In fact, I have several friends that do that. And Manchester, you've got businesses that have just moved, whether it's the head office to Manchester or whether it's the media city. There's lots of infrastructure that's been there as well. Next slide, please. So that brings us to our round 2 poll. So considering the rental market and letting performance, can you cast your vote? So where would you now choose to invest in 2024? Thanks, guys. Give you some time to answer that. So Manchester's jumped ahead now, 64-36, and I'll now hand you back over to gentlemen from Joseph Mews. Thanks for listening.
Hiya. Oh yeah, sorry, Roger, you take that one, and then Dan can come on the Birmingham one, then I'll come on. I just thought you'd ran off.
Could I have the next slide, please? So yeah, just going to talk to you about some of the key employers in Birmingham. Obviously, Birmingham is getting a lot of relocations to the city, partly because of geographically it's right in the centre of the UK. So, logistically, it makes sense for a lot of companies to want to be in Birmingham. A big one there actually is HSBC. So HSBC relocated, I think it was just after, I think it was in 2020 or 2021. That was massive for us, to be honest. So we heavily dealt with a lot of the relocations from people from London moving to the HSBC office, and it was brilliant from a letting agent and landlord perspective. Every week we would get a list of new people that were relocating, and we were tasked with helping them relocate. That's a big part of the Birmingham lettings market, is working with relocation agents that are working with these sort of companies like your Deutsche Banks and your HSBC and your PwCs. So yeah, and it's a good thing for a landlord. Obviously, some of these companies, they will actually take the tenancy in the company name. So you've kind of got the assurity that you've got a big PLC committing to the tenancy agreement. And even if they don't necessarily put the property in their own company name and it goes into the tenant's name, often they provide relocation packages to their employees. So their employees essentially are using their company's money to pay their rent. So obviously they can then sometimes offer considerably over the asking price to secure the property. Could I have the next slide, please? Okay, I'll pass you back over to Dan, who's going to discuss the employment in Manchester.
Hi. So yeah, I did talk about some of these employees. You'll spot some of these employees that I mentioned before. You've got the BBC, which I did actually just have an alert a while ago that there's further investments going on there. You've got some of the other giants there. You've got Amazon, specifically to Trafford, which is an area of interest. I know that Joseph Mews are looking at a scheme in close to these major employers, which would be just perfect, because Trafford is home to Kellogg's, Unilever, L'Oreal, Adidas, and Procter & Gamble. So those specific companies are all within the Trafford area. So really short distance from the development. That's it's quite exciting. And of course, because of the location, as mentioned earlier, you're uniquely positioned in between, well, not quite in between, but equidistant to Salford and Salford Quays and to the city centre. So again, you've just got these massive employers on your doorstep. It will also feed into the university somewhat. Probably there will be more focus on the employers given the location. of Trafford. It's definitely more professional as an area, but yeah, you will certainly get some mature students as well who want to be a little bit further away from the crowd, a bit more serious on the studies perhaps, and don't want to be in the thick of it all in the city centre. Next slide. So, considering the employment and the business opportunities, where would you choose to invest in 2024? Let's give you a moment to do that, and I'll pass you on to Joseph Mews, who are on the next slide.
That's great. Thanks for voting. Bring on to the next slide, please. So interesting to see there. Again, pretty close, but Manchester taking the lead there. Thanks for the lettings presentations. I think what I get asked a lot, and I'm sure Johnny, Mark, and the rest of the team do, we still get asked about voids, and obviously we're talking about the way the market is at the moment. It's only going one way. We're not building enough houses, as we said, more people in rented accommodation. So the market has always been strong. As an example, our chairman's had in Birmingham, as an example, 15 apartments for 25 years in the city centre, one mix of 1 and 2 beds. The worst void he's ever had at any time in those 25 years is 2 weeks. So that's through COVID, Brexit, war, recession, Trump, trust. So we're in a rental market. So as I say, the least you need to worry about is voids, is filling it. We know that the market's strong. And again, we can protect us. And if we have a look at, we've touched briefly on Birmingham and Manchester, the sort of second and third, fourth biggest cities in the UK. If I can have the next slide, we're going to talk about regeneration, what sort of happened and what's happening really within the sort of confines really of the city centre. So in Birmingham, as I said, it's the second biggest city in the UK, gone through massive expansion. You've got, we talked about train stations in Birmingham, and I'll come on to HS2 and the main train station. Got 4 train stations, but you've also got the Midlands Metro. So that's the tram, which is up and running now, came live in about 2017. They're extending the tram at the moment. So you've got 2 main stations, little interim stations, and the trams. And again, it's a very compact city, Birmingham. All the key areas that we build in, and we're talking about it, apart from the airport, you can walk to. So again, the infrastructure is there and being expanded upon in the future, and the metro will take you out to the new high-speed train terminal, and I'll come on to that in a second as well. As probably with most places, wherever you visit an airport in the world, they always seem to be expanding. Birmingham's no different at the moment. You can fly to 130 destinations with 27 airline operators, and Manchester similar, probably a bit bigger there as well. And this all ties in with this big city plan. So this is one of the biggest infrastructure plans and therefore projects in the UK, if not Europe. So the big city plan's amazing. It's a strategic plan for central Birmingham. It's designed to create sort of fair and inclusive green spaces that benefit the community. So it's a sort of statutory planning framework, and it guides all the decisions on all the regeneration in Birmingham, because like most cities, they've, you know, it's a bit higgledy-piggledy and a bit of a mess. Birmingham was a bit of an ugly concrete jungle back in the day. So the big city plan is really progressive and ties all the areas of the cities together. So it's not disparate. It's very much a cohesive plan, and that's thanks to the mayor really. of Birmingham, who's done a great job and is a great champion. It really is transforming Birmingham. And this big city plan, it's a 16 billion investment, runs from 2016 to 2040. So it's a phenomenal infrastructure and planning project, which affects not only the city centre, but all the sort of surrounding areas as well. If I could have the next slide, please. We talked about some of the businesses there earlier on, and you've got the Snow Hill Master Plan. That's actually up and running now. So that was the largest speculative commercial development, excuse me, outside of London. That's all done and dusted and live now. And just in one of those towers, which is where BT is, you've got 4,000 people just in one office block there from BT. You've got Brindley Place, which isn't mentioned on there, but you've got 12,000 people working there. You've got the Birmingham Health and Innovation Campus, part of the universities. Again, a little bit like Manchester, you've got 5 universities in Birmingham, and 4 of those are in the top 10 in the UK. Perry Barr's a little bit outside of the city centre, but another regeneration area. And then you've got Smithfield. So the Smithfield market is the old wholesale fruit and veg market. It's a £1.5 billion scheme, more shopping, more public realm, more outdoor space, office space, art gallery, music venues. And that will connect all the parts of the city together with integrated boulevard walkways and integrated public sort of transport. And the icing on the cake, really, which again is all linked, HS2 is the high-speed train terminal, or Curzon Street is where the train terminal is. So that's well underway, and that's construction has started on that. So again, we always say in Manchester and in Birmingham, there's a lot that's happened, which is good, because you don't want to see all these things on paper. We want to see things happen. There's a lot happening. A lot of these Smithfield has just started, for example. HS2 is under construction, but there's a lot more to come, which is, as investors, is what we want to see. If I could have the next slide, please. Icing on the cake really is high-speed train link. In terms of the actual station, it's going to be the most environmentally trained station in Europe. And at the moment, we talked about job creation. There's a lot of people commuting to and from London now. It's taking 1 hour and 21 minutes. And that travel time will come down to 49 minutes. Average commute time in the UK today is 1 hour. So it really brings it in Birmingham, London. It makes it even more commutable. The actual terminus comes into the southern part of the city, and again, will be well connected with the extension to the tram. We've already got, it's not like Birmingham hasn't got a train station. With New Street train stations, 171 trains today go to and from London. So we're well served, but HS2, these massive infrastructure projects really make a huge difference to any city. And we said there, it's expected to complete in the sort of 2029. I'm sure it will be late, a little bit like the Elizabeth line in London, for those that know that. And I'm sure it will be over budget, but it's happening, and it will have a knock-on effect to other cities as well, because obviously you can onward commute from Birmingham as well. So a lot happening in Birmingham. It's the tip of the iceberg. For both Birmingham and Manchester, we have tons of report, data, information. As I say, I've just wanted to touch on some of the key projects, but there's a lot more besides. If I could have the next slide, please. So again, Manchester is very similar to Birmingham. Lots of regeneration projects and sort of changing the face of the city. If anyone's looking to invest, if you haven't visited Birmingham or Manchester in a few years, the transformation is remarkable. So a couple of little innovative things. You've got this Manchester Civic Quarter Heat Network, bit of a clunky name, but it's located in the heart of the city, and that provides power to some of the most iconic buildings in the city. And why is that important? Well, it's a step towards Manchester City Council's plans to become net zero carbon, zero waste, and zero climate by 2038. So again, you know, leading edge in terms of the environment, particularly in cities as well. The factory, it's a new cultural landmark. It's studios, a music venue. It's a large public space for the community. And you've got Piccadilly Gardens, which is a large open space area. Again, it's in the heart of the city, has work and leisure opportunities, and it's a destination point within the city centre. So people from outside the city come to, and it supports people in the city as well. If I could have the next slide, please. Something that's been touched upon is Trafford in this Salford Regeneration, or the Trafford Regeneration Master Plan. Again, we're getting more environmentally aware. Planners, city planners and town planners are changing, more green areas, learn the lessons from the past. And you've got the Salford Regeneration. So the key achievement there, I'd say, is something Dan mentioned earlier, which is Salford Quays. And that's where you got Media City, and that's a £550 million investment. When you get that kind of investment, everything else sort of follows suit. So you've got the start of the work to build Salford Port. That's created over 1,000 new jobs in the first phase, and in the second phase, another 3,100 jobs. You've got the new Salford City Stadium. You've got the completion of Green Gate Square, which is set to be the catalyst for another £400 million of private investment. And again, you've got projects like the Soap Works, which is a skills and technology hub in the city centre and in this area as well. And you've got revitalisation of the canals, Bridgewater Canal and the river there. Again, bringing life back into the city and regenerating those nice features, those canals as well. And as was mentioned earlier, and probably the most famous redevelopment area is Media City. We've already mentioned BBC, ITV, University of Salford are there, Warner Brothers. And again, as Dan alluded to, there's 250 businesses in that area as well, predominantly media and digital, but supporting that as well. So be interested to see what the votes are, because both areas are going through arguably the biggest sort of regeneration of any cities in the UK, which is only going to help. So based on that, what I've talked about on the regeneration, let's have another vote. And where would you consider investing in 2024? While you're doing that, I might just want to mention, I don't think we mentioned it earlier on, there should be somewhere on your screen there, we're going to have a Q&A session at the end. So any questions, whether it's lettings, Manchester, rental yields, whatever it happens to be to do with property, whether it's about specific developments, locations, anything we've covered in today or more, please pop it in there, and we'll at the end we can go through those Q&As. So we got 64 Bram, 36. Man, I need to do it on average. That's probably going to bring it to about sort of 50-50. Lovely. All right. Well, thanks for that. Thank you for everyone for voting. Let me hand you over to Johnny, who's going to do the final round.
Hi everyone, and yeah, thanks to Andrew, Dan and Raj there. Hopefully everyone found that exciting. Yeah, 3 rounds Birmingham was down and then comes out and wins in the 4th round. So yeah, interesting. Look, as you can see, there's reasons why both of them making great investment cases, and yeah, both have their merits. What I'm going to show you now in our final round is one property in each location. So these are 2 of our most recent launches, one in Birmingham, one in Manchester. So if I can have the next slide, please. As Andrew mentioned, there is I did mean to mention this at the beginning, there is a question box. So we've got a few in already, but if you'd like to ask a question, then you can just type it on the side. So we're going to start with Birmingham. So if we go to the next slide, please. So this development is called Settle, and I mentioned earlier about our partnership with Knight Frank. This is a Knight Frank affiliated development. So Knight Frank, the consultant, they're the distributor with Joseph Mews. And if we go to the next slide, please. It is right in the city centre of Birmingham. So Raj talked about these areas earlier. This is at the foot of the jewellery quarter, so it's right at the bottom. You can actually see at the top of that screen of the photo, that is St Paul's Square, which is the nicest location in the jewellery quarter, and this is just 150 metres away from that. So it's in a beautiful part, but also it's equidistant to the CBD. So where all the jobs are, where you can walk to amenities, bars, restaurants, jobs, train station, is only 150 metres the other way. So it really is the perfect location within Birmingham city centre. Prices here start at £245,000. It's a makeup of 1 beds and 2 beds. And as you can see, this is the development that you'll see on your left. There are 2 blocks. One is 6 floors and one is 11 floors. On the top of the 6th floor, you can see in that photo, there's a communal garden terrace. Talking about amenities, as Raj was earlier, this adds an extra element to this property. You do have this communal garden space that has views not only over the city, but over St Paul's Square and the jewellery quarter as well. So it's a beautiful, beautiful development. The completion is going to be likely at the end of Q1, but handing over Q2. So we're not too far away. We're pretty close to completion here. We can send videos and further information on the development, and you'll see it's obviously topped out, and now we're just doing the finishing touches. So you can get a really good feel for how the development looks in the surrounding area. So if you would like that information, then please do ask and we can send over those videos. Next slide, please. So again, talking about amenities, you'll see bottom right, there's a yoga studio within the development. You can see the roof terrace there. There's going to be a concierge downstairs. There's going to be a cafe. There's going to be a residence lounge area. Again, so, you know, a lot of people are still working from home globally, but particularly in the UK at the moment, at least a day or 2 a week. So that facilitates that. And this sort of new age of amenities being a demand in city centres, in Birmingham in particular, is really prominent. So this ticks all the boxes in terms of that. So you have all of these amenities within the development. Next slide, please. Again, we've talked about the aesthetic, the reason that it's red brick. This is a new build, by the way. It's not a conversion. It is a brand new build from the ground up. The red brick aesthetic is something that you have to do and adhere to as a developer within the jewellery quarter in Birmingham. You've got over 200 grade listed buildings in that area, which are all red brick, and beautiful architecture that we want to reciprocate with these new builds. So we have to do that as developers, and it's great because it really adds to the aesthetic and the feel of a village within the city, and that's what we've gone for here. But it is a brand new build. Next slide, please. So location wise, I talked about earlier, you can see Settle where it's located, St Paul's Square just above, and then across the road you've got the CBD, Colmore Row. All of the jobs, amenities, train stations are just a walk away, but you're in at the foot of and the nicest part of the jewellery quarter, which, as I said, is a village within the city. So you really have the best of both worlds. Best location within the city, a Knight Frank development, and a fantastic developer, which I think I'll come on to now. If we go to the next slide. So yeah, so HBD, Henry Boot development there, an award-winning developer all across Europe. They've not just built in the UK, they've built all over the place, £1.2 billion portfolio. They're fantastic, so you can trust them. You know that the quality is going to be fantastic. All the appliances and everything are of a high standard. They really build towards that professional market, not just in terms of the amenities and what they offer there, but in terms of the actual finish itself. So here, you really do have a perfect storm again in terms of Knight Frank. Henry Boot is a developer in one of the best, if not the best location in the city centre. So fantastic development. We only launched it a couple of weeks ago. They're really focusing here on only giving a certain amount to investors. So you're only going to have 40% of the development that goes to investors, and 60% they're going to be selling when it completes to homeowners. So there's only 40% that we're allowed to sell to investors. Again, that will bode well for mortgages, and further down the line, having an investor-led development can get you in a bit of a sticky situation with mortgages sometimes. So it's great that both of these developments are only given an allocation for investors and the rest will be homeowners. Next slide, please. Okay, so Manchester, we realise we just hit the hour mark, so try and be quick with this last development. We go to the next slide, please. This is our latest development. It's called Trafford Gardens. It's in Manchester. We'll show you a map shortly. Difference here is that we're a longer build phase. So we're looking at Q1 2025 for this to finish. Off the back of that, you only need to put down a 10% deposit initially. 10% is 6 months down the line. Starting prices here are £210,000 for a 1-bed. Great location, as you'll see shortly from the map, walking distance to some of the jobs that we mentioned earlier, ITV, BBC, 6-minute tram into the city centre. And again, it's got a communal garden within the middle, built again, high quality towards the professional market, who we know, as we've heard from both Dan and Raj, is really where the demand is coming from in these city centres. It's that professional market. 116 apartments. Got to mention the Birmingham one is 104 apartments, I believe. So similar sort of size, which is great. That might sound like a lot of numbers, but it's actually not that large in comparison. So next slide, please. Again, I mentioned it before, it's a 10% deposit on exchange, 10% 6 months after, and then 80% on completion. Next slide, please. So this shows you the location. You can see some iconic positions there. You can see Old Trafford Football Stadium. You can see Emirates Cricket Grounds to your left. Walking distance, both of these. You can see ITV to the north of the photo and BBC. Both of these are walking distance. And then you're only a 6-minute tram into the centre where all the jobs are. So it really is a great location, as Dan, I'm sure, will reciprocate. And we know that there's a huge demand in this area for many, many reasons, jobs, tourism as well as an easy commute into the city centre. Next slide, please. Again, some further images, and as I said, what I would ask is that if you want to see further information, then just ask, and we can obviously send over on an email some full details of both of these developments, brochures and floor plans, videos, etc. Next slide, please. Again, we'll go to the next slide. As I mentioned before, we're talking about the professional market here, and both of these projects adhere to that with their finishing. So the final round, Birmingham obviously won in the 4th round. The last time we'll ask you to vote, which city would you consider to have won the title, the ultimate UK property investment champion? If you could vote now, that would be fantastic. Okay. Wow, that is a big swing. 78% Birmingham to 22% Manchester. That is a big turn of events during that. So yeah, interesting to see. Look, as we said, both of them are fantastic investment opportunities for their various different reasons. And yeah, and thank you for all your voting, and I hope you found that useful. And obviously thank you to Dan and Raj for coming on and giving us an insight into that market, to both of those markets. We do have an offer for today for everybody that attended, to say thank you for this and for all your hard work voting. For anybody that is to get in touch with us and to make a reservation within the 24 hours from the webinar, there will be a contribution of £1,000 towards your solicitor fees for the investment. So it's a nice added incentive. As I said, you can get in touch with us straight away and book in one-on-ones, depending on where in the world that you are. It will be myself, Andrew, or Mark, that we can jump on a call with you, go through availability for each of these developments. And obviously for anybody that attended within that time, you will get that £1,000 towards your solicitor fees. So a nice Christmas bonus just before we head into the festive season. Again, conscious of time, we're obviously over the hour mark now. We do have a couple of questions. I think I'll just go through a couple of them, and then, as I say, any others, just please do ask, and we can send any further information over, or you can book in one-on-one meetings. But one of the questions here is to do with, is for Dan, I believe, to do with Manchester. Are there too many developments in Manchester currently? So Dan, if you're still there, it'd be great if you could answer that for us.
Yeah, hi. So I've had this question asked of me many times now. there's one client in particular who's a landlord. He's got quite a few properties. He must have 10 or 15 apartments in the city. And for years and years, I used to call him Chicken Little, because he was always worrying and saying, "Oh, Dan, they're just building so much in Manchester. I'm just worried. What's he going to do to our apartments?" And funnily enough, he stopped saying that 2 years ago because, well, he's just experienced the same unreal growth that we all have. You know, the rental growth's never mind going down, it's just been going up and up. So no, I don't think there is a real risk. I think the amount of new build that was going up in previous years was far greater than what it is now. There's still a nice healthy supply, but there's just never going to be enough that's being built. So yeah, I understand the question, and obviously it's natural to think that there's a lot going up, but yeah, it's just not enough to keep up with the supply, with the demand even. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much, Dan. Yeah, and it's, you know, you're obviously on the ground every day, so it's great to hear it from the horse's mouth, as it were. And so thanks for that. We've got a few more questions. As I say, we're going to email over information. We're going to email a recording of the presentation. And so if you do, you know, have any further questions after you've digested that, then obviously please do ask. We've had a couple of questions about mortgages. Look, 95% of our clients take mortgages, so it's something that we rely on. Again, it's something that we can help with. If you do want to speak to a mortgage broker, whether you're based in South Africa, the Middle East, the UK, Europe, wherever you are, there will be options available to you. So that is something that obviously will really help your investment and understand what your capabilities are. So again, if you would like help from a mortgage perspective, then do let us know. I've had other questions about service charge, about the cash flows, elements of it, and your costs. Again, for each specific unit within each development, we provide a cash flow that projects for 15 years what your costs and what your income is going to be, based on appreciation, based on rental values, and we can input what your mortgage loan would be, what the interest rate would be. So as I said, if you do want further information on that, then please ask and we can send over these cash flows. Andrew, anything you'd like to add your side?
Yeah, I was just going to say, if you know, in the box, if you want us to contact you, just put in your name or your email address or your phone number, and then we'll make sure we give you, either one of the three of us or one of the sales team will give you a priority call back. And yeah, and just wanted to say something on that supply and demand. Again, there's just such a shortage of housing. We're hundreds of thousands shortage every year. And more people, you know, in the UK, we're always 20% rent, 80% purchase, and it was the other way around in Europe. And we're seeing that now, as I say, lifestyle reasons, but more financial reasons, really. So that's the least thing to worry about, is that sort of supply and demand dynamic. Yes, there are more builds coming, but, you know, population's growing. People are moving, particularly to Birmingham and Manchester, because of all the new jobs. So it's a perfect storm. So yeah, please drop us a message or come to us directly if you've got our details, and then we're happy to pick up on that and give you all the information, whether it's more marketing information to do with the city centres or the actual development itself and availability. That would be fantastic. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, everybody, and thanks to all our speakers. And as I say, we'll be in contact with all of you. So if you have any questions, you can respond to that. Thanks again.
Thank you.